And the worst part, the absolute worst part is that while your body is convinced it's dying, a tiny part of your brain knows something else is happening. But you can't access that part. You can't think rationally. You can't talk yourself out of it. You're trapped inside your own mind while it tries to kill you with fear. #panic attack. The quiet collapse of the mind. You're overreacting. It's all in your head. Hey, listen to me for a second. I need to tell you something that might save your life. Or at least make you feel like you're not completely losing your mind. Because right now, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting alone at 2:37 a.m., staring at nothing, feeling like their world is about to end. And they have absolutely no idea what's happening to them. Maybe that someone is you. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you're there right now. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? That moment when everything just stops, when your heart starts beating so fast you think it might explode right out of your chest. When you can't breathe, can't think, can't move. When the room starts spinning and you feel like you're dying, literally dying, and no one around you has any clue what's happening. This is about panic attacks, but not the clinical, sterile version you read about in medical textbooks. This is about the real thing. The terrifying, soul-crushing, life-altering experience that millions of people go through every single day, and yet somehow we still act like it's some kind of dirty secret. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Actually, don't close them. Keep watching, but imagine this with me. It's 2:37 a.m. You're alone. Maybe you were scrolling through your phone. Maybe you were trying to sleep. Maybe you were just sitting there thinking about tomorrow, or yesterday, or that thing you said 3 years ago that still makes you cringe, and then it hits. First, your heart, boom, 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 like someone's banging a drum inside your chest, getting faster and faster until it sounds like a machine gun. You put your hand over your heart and think, this isn't normal. This can't be normal. Am I having a heart attack? Am I 25 years old and having a heart attack? Then you're breathing short, shallow gasps that don't seem to bring any air into your lungs. You try to take a deep breath, but it's like there's an invisible hand wrapped around your throat, squeezing tighter and tighter. You're drowning, but there's no water. You're suffocating, but there's plenty of air. Your body just forgot how to use it. Your hands start shaking, not just a little tremor. I'm talking about full-on earthquake shakes that make it impossible to hold anything, to text anyone, to do anything except stare at these traitor hands that won't obey your brain anymore. The room starts to change. The walls might be moving closer, or maybe they're moving further away. You can't tell. Everything looks wrong, feels wrong, sounds wrong. That clock on the wall that you never noticed before is now ticking so loudly it might as well be a bomb counting down to your doom. Tick, tick, tick. Each second stretching out like an hour. And then comes the voice in your head. Oh, that voice. It starts quiet, almost reasonable. Something's wrong. This isn't normal. You need help. But then it gets louder, more insistent, more terrifying. You're having a heart attack. You're going to die. You're 25 and you're going to die alone on your bedroom floor, and no one will find you until your landlord comes looking for rent money. Call 911? No, wait. You can't move. You can't speak. You're paralyzed. This is it. This is how it ends, and the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that while your body is convinced it's dying, a tiny part of your brain knows something else is happening, but you can't access that part. You can't think rationally. You can't talk yourself out of it. You're trapped inside your own mind while it tries to kill you with fear. You know what makes it even worse? The things people say afterward. Oh my God. The things people say. You're overreacting. It's all in your head. You just need to calm down. Have you tried breathing exercises? You should try yoga. My cousin had anxiety and she just started drinking more water. You're too young to be stressed. You have nothing to worry about. Let me tell you something. If someone could just calm down during a panic attack, they would. If it was as simple as thinking positive thoughts or doing some deep breathing, do you think anyone would choose to go through this hell? A panic attack isn't being worried about a test. It's not feeling nervous before a date. It's not having butterflies in your stomach. A panic attack is your brain's fire alarm system malfunctioning and screaming emergency when there's no fire, but the alarm is so loud and so convincing that your entire body prepares for death. Your brain, this incredible organ that can solve complex problems and create beautiful art and fall in love, suddenly becomes your worst enemy. It floods your system with adrenaline like you're being chased by a lion, except the lion is invisible and inside your head, and you can't run from it because it goes everywhere you go. But here's what I want you to understand, and this is important. You're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not broken. You're human, and panic attacks are something that happens to humans. Strong humans, smart humans, successful humans, funny humans, brave humans. You know who's had panic attacks? Emma Stone. The actress, she's talked about having them so bad as a child that she thought she was having heart attacks. Oprah Winfrey has talked about panic attacks. Johnny Depp has had them. Ryan Reynolds, Scarlett Johansson, Adele, she had to stop concerts because of panic attacks. These are successful, wealthy, talented people with access to the best healthcare in the world, and they still struggle with this. Because panic attacks don't care about your bank account or your achievements or how many people love you. They're not a sign that you're not grateful enough for your life or that you need to try harder to be positive. They're a medical condition, just like diabetes or a broken bone or any other thing that can go wrong with the incredibly complex machine that is your human body. Let me paint you another picture. You're having a panic attack. Let's say on a train, you're surrounded by people, but you might as well be on Mars. You're gripping the seat, trying not to hyperventilate, and everyone around you is just living their lives. Reading their newspapers, scrolling their phones, having conversations, and you're sitting there thinking, how is no one noticing that I'm dying right now? How is the world just continuing while I'm having a medical emergency? But the truth is, panic attacks are invisible. There's no blood, no obvious injury, no clear sign that anything is wrong. You look fine on the outside while you're falling, apart on the inside, or maybe you're that student I mentioned, frozen in a hallway at school. The bell rings, everyone else moves to their next class, and you're just standing there, paralyzed. Your friends might walk by and say, "Hey, are you okay?" And you nod and smile, because how do you explain that you literally cannot move right now? How do you say, "Actually, I think I'm having a medical emergency, but there's no blood, so everyone thinks I'm just being dramatic"? Or you're that guy crying in his car in a parking lot. You drove to work, parked, and then couldn't get out of the car. You're already 20 minutes late. Your phone is buzzing with texts from your boss, and you're just sitting there, sobbing. Because your brain has convinced you that if you go into that building, something terrible will happen. You don't know what, there's no specific threat, but the fear is so overwhelming, so physical, so real that you can't move. Here's the thing about panic attacks that no one tells you: they're time travelers. They don't just ruin the moment you're having them, they ruin the time before and after before, because you start living in fear of having another one. You avoid places where you've had them. You stop doing things you love because what if you panic and can't escape? You turn down invitations, skip events, make excuses. Your world gets smaller and smaller because you're trying to outrun something that lives inside your head, and after, because you feel embarrassed, ashamed, weak. You replay the whole thing in your mind. Why did I react like that? Why couldn't I just handle it? What's wrong with me? You start to identify as someone who has panic attacks, like it's your defining characteristic instead of just something that happens to you sometimes. Can I tell you a secret? Can I tell you something that might change how you think about this? Every single person who has ever had a panic attack has survived it. Every single one. I know it doesn't feel like it in the moment. I know it feels like you're dying, like this time is different, like this time you won't make it through, but you will, you always do. Your body is incredibly smart. It knows how to keep you alive even when your brain is panicking. Your heart might race, but it won't explode. You might feel like you can't breathe, but you won't suffocate. You might feel like you're losing your mind, but you're not. You're having a temporary malfunction in your brain's alarm system, and like all alarms, it will eventually turn off. The average panic attack lasts between 5 and 20 minutes. That's it. It feels like hours, but it's not. It's a few minutes of hell followed by exhaustion, confusion, and usually embarrassment. But then life goes on because you survived again. Now, I'm not telling you this to minimize what you're going through. Those minutes are genuinely terrible. I'm telling you this because sometimes, in the middle of a panic attack, remembering that it will end can be the thing that helps you get through it. Let me tell you about grounding techniques because this might actually help you. When you're panicking, your mind is in the future, imagining catastrophes that haven't happened. Grounding brings you back to the present moment. Try the 5 for 3 to 1 technique. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. It sounds stupid, I know, but it works because it forces your brain to focus on what's actually happening right now instead of what it's afraid might happen. Or try the ice cube trick. Keep an ice cube in your mouth, hold one in your hands, or rub one on your wrists. The cold is shocking enough to snap your nervous system out of panic mode. It's like hitting a reset button on your brain. Some people carry a small object with them, a smooth stone, a fidget toy, a photo, something they can hold and focus on. It becomes an anchor to reality when everything else feels like it's spinning out of control. And breathing. Yes, I know everyone talks about breathing, and I know it's annoying when people tell you to just breathe when you feel like you're suffocating. But there's a specific way to breathe that actually works. It's called box breathing. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, repeat. It forces your nervous system to slow down. But here's what I really want you to know. It's okay if these techniques don't work for you. It's okay if nothing works and you just have to ride it out. It's okay if you need medication. It's okay if you need therapy. It's okay if you need to call someone or go to the emergency room. There's no wrong way to survive a panic attack. You know what's not okay. Suffering in silence because you're embarrassed or because someone told you it's all in your head. Your pain is real. Your fear is real. The fact that it's caused by misfiring neurons instead of an external threat doesn't make it less valid or less terrifying. Let me tell you about Sarah. She's not a celebrity or anyone famous. She's just someone I know who's been dealing with panic attacks for years. The first time it happened, she was at work in a meeting. Suddenly, her heart started racing and she felt like she couldn't breathe. She excused herself, went to the bathroom, and spent 20 minutes convinced she was having a heart attack. She didn't tell anyone. She went back to the meeting, finished her day, and spent the evening Googling her symptoms, convinced something was seriously wrong with her heart. It happened again a week later, then 3 days after that. Each time, she was sure she was dying. Each time, she survived but felt more confused and scared. It took her 6 months to finally tell her doctor what was happening. 6 months of living in fear, avoiding places where she'd panicked, making excuses to skip social events. 6 months of feeling like she was going crazy and being too ashamed to ask for help. The doctor explained that she was having panic attacks, prescribed some medication to help with the acute symptoms, and recommended therapy. It wasn't an instant fix, nothing ever is. But slowly, over time, Sarah learned to recognize the signs, developed coping strategies, and most importantly, stopped feeling like she was broken. She still has panic attacks sometimes. But now she knows what they are. She has tools to help manage them. She has people she can call. She knows they will end. And that knowledge, that preparation, that support system, it changes everything. Or take Marcus. He had his first panic attack at 16. During his SATs, he was halfway through the math section when suddenly the room started spinning and he felt like he was going to throw up. He raised his hand, asked to go to the bathroom, and spent the rest of the test period sitting on the floor of the bathroom stall. Convinced he was having some kind of breakdown, his parents took him to the doctor, who ran a bunch of tests and found nothing wrong. It's probably just stress, they said. He's a teenager. This is normal, but it wasn't normal for Marcus. The panic attacks started happening more frequently, before tests, before social events, sometimes for no reason at all. He started avoiding things, making excuses, isolating himself. His grades suffered, his relationships suffered. He suffered. It wasn't until college, when he finally saw a therapist who specialized in anxiety disorders, that he learned what was happening to him had a name and, more importantly, was treatable. Through therapy, medication, and a lot of hard work, Marcus learned to manage his panic attacks. Today, he's a successful engineer, married with 2 kids. He still deals with anxiety, but it doesn't control his life anymore. He's open about his struggles with mental health, and he's become someone his friends and family come to when they're struggling with similar issues. Here's what I want you to understand. Having panic attacks doesn't mean you're destined for a life of fear and limitation. It means you're dealing with a medical condition that requires treatment and management, just like any other health issue. But getting help can be hard. Really hard. Maybe you don't have good health insurance. Maybe you live in an area where mental health resources are limited. Maybe your family or culture sees mental health issues as shameful. Maybe you're scared that seeking help will affect your job or your relationships. These are real barriers, and I'm not going to pretend they don't exist or that they're easy to overcome. But I want you to know that there are resources out there. Even if they're not perfect or immediately accessible, crisis hotlines exist in most countries, and many are available 24/7. Online therapy has become more common and affordable. There are support groups, both in person and online, where you can connect with other people who understand what you're going through. Your school probably has counseling services. Your workplace might have an employee assistance program. Your doctor can prescribe medication even if they're not a specialist. Libraries often have free resources about mental health. Community centers sometimes offer support groups. I'm not saying any of this is easy to access or that the system isn't broken in many ways. I'm saying that help exists, and you deserve to get it, even if you have to fight for it. And while you're working on getting professional help, there are things you can do to take care of yourself. Regular exercise can help, not because you need to work off your anxiety, but because physical activity changes your brain chemistry in ways that can reduce anxiety over time. Sleep matters. I know it's hard to sleep when you're anxious, and I know anxiety can mess with your sleep schedule, but prioritizing sleep hygiene can help break the cycle. Limit caffeine, especially if you're prone to panic attacks. Caffeine can trigger the same physical symptoms as panic: increased heart rate, jitters, that feeling of being wired, and sometimes your brain can't tell the difference. Connect with people. I know panic attacks can make you want to isolate, but human connection is medicine. Even if you can't talk about what you're going through, just being around people who care about you can help. Be gentle with yourself. You wouldn't judge someone for taking medication for diabetes or using a wheelchair for a mobility issue. Don't judge yourself for having a brain that sometimes malfunctions. It's not your fault, and it doesn't say anything about your character or your worth as a person. Here's something else I want you to know. You're not alone, not even close. Panic disorder affects about 6 million American adults. That's roughly 2.7% of the population. Panic attacks are even more common. Studies suggest that up to 23% of people will experience a panic attack at some point in their lives. That means in a room of 100 people, at least 2 or 3 of them have panic disorder, and maybe 20 or more have experienced a panic attack. In your workplace, your school, your neighborhood, your family, there are people who know exactly what you're going through. The tragedy is that most of them are also suffering in silence, just like you might be, because we've created a culture where mental health struggles are seen as weakness or personal failures. rather than medical conditions that require treatment and compassion. But that's changing. Slowly, but it's changing. More celebrities are talking openly about their mental health struggles. More companies are providing mental health benefits. More schools are teaching about emotional wellness. More families are having honest conversations about anxiety and depression. You are part of that change. Every time you seek help, every time you talk openly about what you're going through, every time you show compassion to someone else who's struggling, you're helping to break down the stigma that keeps people suffering in silence. Now, I want to talk to the people who love someone with panic attacks, because you matter too. It's hard to watch someone you care about go through this. It's frustrating when you can't fix it or make it better. It's scary when you don't understand what's happening. First, believe them. When someone tells you they're having a panic attack, don't tell them to calm down or that it's not that bad. They know it's not rational. They wish they could calm down. They're not choosing to feel this way. Ask what they need. Some people want to be left alone during a panic attack. Others want someone to stay with them. Some want to talk through it. Others need silence. Don't assume you know what will help. Ask. Single quotes to take it personally if they can't do things they used to do or if they need to leave events early. Panic attacks can be unpredictable, and someone might feel fine one day and terrible the next. It's not about you or how much they care about the event or relationship. Encourage them to seek professional help, but don't nag or threaten ultimatums. Getting help is ultimately their decision, and pressuring them might make things worse. Educate yourself. Read about panic attacks and anxiety disorders. The more you understand what your loved one is going through, the better you can support them and take care of yourself too. Supporting someone with mental health issues can be emotionally draining. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to seek your own support. You can't pour from an empty cup. Let me tell you one more story. This one's about hope. Her name is Lisa, and she's 34 years old. For most of her 20s, panic attacks controlled her life. She couldn't drive on highways, couldn't go to crowded places, couldn't travel, couldn't even go to grocery stores without feeling like she might panic and embarrass herself. She thought that was just going to be her life. She'd adapted, found ways to work around her limitations, accepted that she was just the anxious one in her friend group. But at 31, something shifted. Maybe it was getting tired of missing out on things. Maybe it was meeting someone who made her want to push her boundaries. Maybe it was just being ready to fight for herself. She started therapy with someone who specialized in anxiety disorders. She learned about cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, and mindfulness techniques. She started medication that helped take the edge off her symptoms. Most importantly, she started to see panic attacks not as proof that she was broken, but as symptoms of a condition that could be managed. It took time. A lot of time. There were setbacks and bad days and moments when she wanted to give up. But slowly, gradually, her world got bigger again. Last year, she took her first international flight in over a decade. She had a panic attack during takeoff. Her heart raced, her palms got sweaty. She felt that familiar fear rising in her chest. But this time, instead of spiraling into catastrophic thinking, she used her breathing techniques, practiced her grounding exercises, and reminded herself that panic attacks and she made it through the flight. She had an amazing vacation. She's planning another trip next year. She still has panic attacks sometimes, but they don't run her life anymore. She has tools, she has support, and most importantly, she has hope. That's what I want for you, not a life without anxiety. That's probably not realistic for most of us living in this chaotic, stressful world. But a life where anxiety doesn't make all your decisions for you. A life where panic attacks are something that happens to you sometimes, not something that defines you. You know what the most beautiful thing is? Every time you survive a panic attack, you prove to yourself that you can survive a panic attack. Every time you use a coping technique and it helps, even a little bit, you're building evidence that you have some control over this thing that feels so overwhelming. Every time you reach out for help, you're taking a step toward healing. Every time you're honest about what you're going through, you're making it easier for the next person to be honest about their struggles. You're not just surviving, you're building resilience, developing tools, becoming someone who understands both suffering and strength in ways that most people never will. And someday, when you're in a better place, someone else who's struggling will cross your path. They'll be where you are now, scared, confused, feeling alone and broken. And you'll be able to look them in the eye and say, I know, I've been there. You're going to be okay. You'll be living proof that panic attacks don't have to win. That this terrible thing they're going through isn't the end of their story, that survival is possible, recovery is possible, and hope is real. So right now, in this moment, wherever you are, whatever you're feeling, take a deep breath, look around you. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, feel your feet on the ground. You are here, you are real, you are alive, you have survived every panic attack you've ever had. You have survived every difficult day up to this point. You are stronger than you know, braver than you feel, and more resilient than you imagine. The panic attacks might not be over. The anxiety might not disappear, but you're not the same person you were before this started. You've been through something difficult and you're still here. That matters, that means something. You are not your panic attacks. You are not your anxiety. You are a whole, complex, valuable human being who happens to have a brain that sometimes sounds false alarms. And that's okay. You're still worthy of love, success, happiness, and all the good things life has to offer. Tomorrow morning, the sun will rise, you will wake up. You will have choices to make, small ones, maybe, but choices nonetheless. You can choose to be gentle with yourself. You can choose to reach out for help. You can choose to take one small step toward the life you want. And if you have a panic attack tomorrow, or next week, or next month, you'll survive that one too. Because that's what you do, that's who you are. You're a survivor, you're not alone, you're not broken. You're not weak, you're human, you're struggling. And you're going to be okay, but let me tell you something else, something that might blow your mind. Do you know what happens to your brain during a panic attack? I mean, literally, scientifically, what's going on up there? Your amygdala, that tiny, almond-shaped part of your brain that's supposed to protect you from danger, goes absolutely haywire. It's like having a smoke detector that goes off every time you make toast. Except in this case, the toast might be a random thought, a crowded room, or, and this is my personal favorite, absolutely nothing at all. Thanks, brain. Really helpful timing. When your amygdala hits the panic button, it floods your system with stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine. These are the same chemicals that would help you outrun a tiger or fight off an attacker. Your body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and a false alarm. It just knows the emergency signal is going off, so it prepares for battle. Your pupils dilate to let in more light. Your muscles tense up, ready to run or fight. Your digestive system shuts down because who needs to digest food when you're about to die? Your body literally redirects blood flow away from non-essential functions and sends it to your major muscle groups. This is why you feel so exhausted after a panic attack. It's not just emotional exhaustion, your body just prepared for and survived what it thought was a life-threatening emergency. You've basically run a marathon while sitting still. And then people wonder why you need a nap afterward. Like, excuse me, I just fought off an invisible tiger for 20 minutes. Can I please have a juice box and a lie down? And here's the really wild part. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational, thinking part of your brain, basically goes offline during a panic attack. That's why you can't think your way out of it. That's why all those logical thoughts like I'm safe, nothing is actually wrong don't help in the moment. The part of your brain that does logic is temporarily unavailable due to the neurological equivalent of a fire drill. Understanding this changed everything for me when I first learned it. It wasn't weakness or lack of willpower that made panic attacks so overwhelming, it was neuroscience. My brain was literally designed to react this way to perceived threats. The problem wasn't that the system was broken. It's that it was working too well. Let me tell you about the physical symptoms that nobody talks about. Sure, everyone knows about the racing heart and shortness of breath. But what about the weird stuff, the symptoms that make you think you're not just having a panic attack, but that something is seriously, medically wrong with you? The tingling, oh my god, the tingling, your hands, your feet, sometimes your whole face goes numb and tingly. The first time it happened to me, I was convinced I was having a stroke. I actually Googled stroke symptoms at 3 a.m. while my left arm felt like it was full of static electricity. Pro tip, never, and I mean never, Google medical symptoms at 3 a.m. Google at 3 a.m. will convince you that a hangnail is actually a rare tropical disease. Trust me on this one, the derealization, everything around you suddenly feels fake, like you're living in a movie or a dream. You look at your own hands and they don't look like your hands. You hear your own voice and it sounds like it's coming from somewhere else. It's terrifying because you start to question reality itself, the depersonalization. This is when you feel like you're outside your own body, watching yourself from above. You might be having a conversation with someone, but it feels like you're watching someone else have that conversation. You know it's you, but it doesn't feel like you. The dizziness and vertigo. The room spins, the floor tilts. You grab onto walls and furniture because you feel like you might fall over. Sometimes it's so bad you have to sit down right where you are, even if you're in the middle of a grocery store aisle. The temperature changes. 1 minute you're freezing cold, the next you're burning up. You might break out in a cold sweat or feel like you have a fever. Your body's thermostat goes completely haywire because it's too busy preparing for that imaginary emergency to regulate your temperature properly. The digestive issues, nausea, stomach cramps, sudden urgent need for a bathroom. Your digestive system basically shuts down during a panic attack, and when it comes back online, it's not always smooth sailing. I've known people who've had to leave important meetings or social events because of panic-related stomach issues, and then there are the sensory changes. Sounds become too loud or too muffled, lights become too bright or everything looks dim. Smells become overwhelming or you can't smell anything at all. It's like someone is randomly adjusting the volume and contrast settings on your senses. And that someone is apparently a toddler who doesn't know how technology works. Let's make everything super bright and also make that person's perfume smell like it's coming from inside your nose. Thanks, panic brain. Really adding to the ambience here, these symptoms are so bizarre, so unlike anything else you've experienced, that they often trigger more panic. You think, okay, maybe the racing heart is anxiety, but this weird tingling and dizziness? This has to be something serious, and then you panic about panicking, which makes everything worse. This is called the panic cycle, and it's absolutely diabolical. You have a physical symptom, which scares you, which causes more physical symptoms, which scares you more, which causes even more symptoms. It's like being trapped in a hall of mirrors where every reflection is more distorted than. The last stop. Breaking this cycle is one of the most important skills you can learn if you deal with panic attacks. It usually starts with recognizing what's happening. Oh, this is a panic attack. These symptoms are scary, but they're not dangerous. My brain is having a false alarm, but recognizing it is easier said than done, especially when you're in the middle of it and your rational brain has basically left the building. This is where having a plan becomes crucial. I want you to create what I call a panic attack action plan. Write it down when you're calm and thinking clearly, because you won't be able to think clearly in the middle of an attack. First, identify your early warning signs. What happens in your body right before a full-blown panic attack? Maybe your heart starts beating a little faster, or you feel a flutter in your stomach, or you get that first wave of dizziness. Learning to recognize these early signs gives you a chance to intervene before the panic reaches full intensity. It's like having a weather warning system, except instead of tornado approaching, it's emotional tornado approaching. Seek shelter immediately, and by shelter, I mean your coping techniques, not an actual underground bunker. Although honestly, some days the bunker sounds pretty appealing, doesn't it? Second, have your grounding techniques ready. We talked about the 5 4 3 to 1 method, but find what works for you. Some people like to carry a small bottle of peppermint oil. The smell is so strong it snaps them back to the present moment. Others like to squeeze ice cubes or dig their fingernails into their palms. The physical sensation cuts through the mental chaos. And yes, I know how that sounds. Oh great, now I'm supposed to hurt myself to feel better? Look, nobody said panic attacks were logical. Sometimes you fight weird with weird, and that's okay. Third, have your support system mapped out. Who can you call or text? Who understands what you're going through? Sometimes you don't need someone to fix anything or give advice. You just need someone to remind you that you're not dying and that this will pass. Fourth, know your safe spaces. Where can you go if you need to get away from wherever you are? Is there a quiet bathroom at work? A private corner in your school library? Your car in the parking lot? Having an escape route planned makes you feel less trapped, which can actually prevent some panic attacks from happening. And finally, have your mantras ready. These are simple phrases you can repeat to yourself when your thoughts are spiraling. This is temporary. I am safe. I have survived this before. This feeling will pass. They might seem silly when you're calm, but they can be lifesavers when you're panicking. And I get it. The first time someone suggested mantras to me, I was like, what am I, a monk? Am I supposed to sit in lotus position and chant while my brain is melting? But honestly, whatever works, works. If reciting the alphabet backward helps you, do it. If singing the theme song from your favorite TV show calms you down, belt it out. There's no wrong way to survive a panic attack. Let me tell you about Jake's panic attack plan, because his story might help you. Jake is a teacher, and he started having panic attacks during the most stressful time in any teacher's year, standardized testing season. The first time it happened, he was in the middle of monitoring a test when suddenly he felt like he couldn't breathe and the room started spinning. He somehow made it through that day, but he was terrified it would happen again, so he developed a plan. He identified his early warning signs, a tight feeling in his chest and a sensation like he was outside his body looking in. He practiced box breathing until he could do it automatically. He arranged with a colleague to be his panic buddy, someone who could cover his class if he needed to step out. Most importantly, he talked to his principal about what was happening. He was terrified that admitting to panic attacks would hurt his career, but his principal was incredibly understanding. They worked together to create a discrete system where Jake could signal if he needed backup. The interesting thing is, once Jake had his plan in place, his panic attacks became less frequent and less severe. Just knowing he had options, that he wasn't trapped, that he had support, it changed everything. He still has anxiety, but it doesn't control his professional life anymore. Now let me talk about something that's really important but often overlooked: the aftermath of panic attacks. The come-down period can be almost as difficult as the attack itself. After the initial terror subsides, you're often left feeling exhausted, confused, and deeply embarrassed. You might feel like you overreacted, like you made a big deal out of nothing. You might worry about what other people think, whether they noticed something was wrong, whether they think you're crazy or weak. This is called the panic hangover, and it's real. Your body has just been through a massive stress response. Your brain has been flooded with stress hormones. You're going to feel drained, both physically and emotionally. Give yourself permission to feel tired. Don't try to push through and act like nothing happened. If you can, take some time to rest and recover. Drink some water, eat something gentle on your stomach. Get some fresh air if possible. And for the love of all that is holy, do not check social media right after a panic attack. Trust me on this. Your brain is already vulnerable and confused. The last thing it needs is to see 17 political arguments and your ex's vacation photos. Save the scrolling for when you're feeling more stable, okay? And please, please don't beat yourself up about what happened. You didn't choose to have a panic attack. You didn't do anything wrong. Your brain had a false alarm and your body responded appropriately to what it perceived as an emergency. That's not a character flaw. That's biology. One thing that really helps with the aftermath is having a post-panic routine. This might be taking a shower, going for a walk, calling someone you trust, journaling about what you experienced, or doing something creative that helps you process the emotions. Sarah, who I mentioned earlier, developed a routine where she would write herself a letter after each panic attack. She would write it as if she was comforting a friend who had just been through the same experience. She would acknowledge how scary it was, remind herself that she survived it, and list 3 things she was grateful for over time. This practice helped her develop more self-compassion and reduce the shame and embarrassment she felt after panic attacks. She also noticed patterns in what triggered her attacks, which helped her develop better prevention strategies. Now, I want to address something that might be running through your mind right now: the fear of having panic attacks in specific situations. This is called anticipatory anxiety, and it can be just as limiting as the panic attacks themselves. Maybe you're afraid to drive because you had a panic attack while driving once. Maybe you avoid crowded places because you panicked at a concert. Maybe you stopped exercising because you had an attack at the gym, and now you associate physical sensations like increased heart rate with panic. This is completely understandable. Your brain is trying to protect you by avoiding situations where panic has occurred before, but unfortunately, this avoidance often makes the problem worse. The more you avoid something, the scarier it becomes in your mind. This is where exposure therapy can be incredibly helpful, but please don't try to do this on your own. Work with a therapist who specializes in anxiety disorders. They can help you gradually, safely reapproach the situations you've been avoiding. The key is starting small. If you're afraid to drive, maybe you start by just sitting in your car with the engine off, then sitting in the car with the engine on, then driving to the end of your driveway, then around the block. Small steps with support, building confidence along the way. I want to talk about medication for a minute because it's a topic that brings up a lot of complicated feelings for people. Some folks feel like taking medication for anxiety means they failed somehow, like they should be able to handle it without pharmaceutical help. Let me be clear, there is absolutely no shame in taking medication for anxiety or panic disorder. None, zero, zilch. If you had diabetes, you wouldn't hesitate to take insulin. If you had high blood pressure, you wouldn't feel guilty about taking blood pressure medication. Mental health conditions are health conditions, and sometimes they require medical treatment. Your brain is an organ, just like your heart or your kidneys. Sometimes organs need a little chemical assistance to work properly. It's not a moral failing, it's medicine. And anyone who tries to make you feel bad about taking care of your health can kindly mind their own business. Thank you very much. There are several types of medications that can help with panic attacks. Some are designed to be taken daily to prevent attacks from happening. Others are fast-acting medications that can help stop a panic attack in progress. Some people need medication temporarily while they're learning coping skills and therapy. Others benefit from longer-term medication use. The right medication regimen is different for everyone, and finding what works can take some trial and error. This can be frustrating, but don't give up. Work closely with a psychiatrist or your primary care doctor to find a combination that helps you feel more like yourself. And remember, taking medication doesn't mean you're weak or that you'll be dependent on pills forever. It means you're taking care of your health and giving yourself the tools you need to function and thrive. Marcus, the guy I mentioned earlier, takes a daily medication that helps keep his baseline anxiety lower. He also has a fast-acting medication that he can take if he feels a panic attack coming on. He doesn't need to use the fast-acting medication very often anymore, but just knowing it's there gives him confidence to do things that used to terrify him. It's like a security blanket, he told me once. I rarely need it, but knowing I have it makes me brave enough to try things I wouldn't try otherwise. And the more I try things and succeed, the less anxious I become overall. Let's talk about the relationship between panic attacks and other mental health conditions, because they rarely exist in isolation. Many people with panic disorder also deal with depression, generalized anxiety, social anxiety, or obsessive-compulsive disorder. This isn't uncommon, and it doesn't mean you're more messed up than someone who only deals with one condition. Mental health conditions often overlap because they involve similar brain chemicals and neural pathways. Think of it like having allergies. If you're allergic to one thing, you're often allergic to several related things. The good news is that many of the treatments for panic disorder also help with other anxiety and mood disorders. Cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness techniques, and many medications are effective for multiple conditions. Don't be afraid to tell your healthcare provider about all of your symptoms, even if they don't seem related. That brain fog you've been experiencing, the trouble sleeping, the feeling like you're just going through the motions of life? These might all be connected, and addressing them holistically often leads to better outcomes than treating each symptom separately. And yes, I know it's awkward to sit in a doctor's office and say, "Well, doctor, sometimes I feel like I'm dying, but also I can't remember where I put my keys, and also I cried at a commercial for dog food yesterday." But guess what? They've heard weirder things. Trust me, you're not going to shock your healthcare provider with your symptoms. I also want to acknowledge something that affects a lot of people but doesn't get talked about enough: the impact of trauma on panic attacks. Sometimes panic attacks seem to come out of nowhere, but sometimes they're connected to traumatic experiences in our past. The trauma might be obvious: a car accident, an assault, a natural disaster. But it might also be less obvious: growing up in a chaotic household, experiencing medical trauma as a child, dealing with bullying or emotional abuse. Our bodies remember trauma even when our conscious minds have moved on. Sometimes a panic attack is your nervous system responding to a trigger that reminds it of a past threat. Even if you don't consciously make the connection. Make the connection. This is why therapy is so important, especially trauma-informed therapy. A good therapist can help you understand the connections between your past experiences and your current symptoms, and they can teach you techniques for healing both the trauma and the panic attacks. EMDR, movement desensitization and reprocessing, is one type of therapy that's particularly effective for trauma-related panic attacks. Somatic therapy, which focuses on the connection between mind and body, can also be incredibly helpful. Now, let's talk about panic attacks in different populations, because the experience isn't the same for everyone. Teenagers and young adults often have a particularly hard time with panic attacks because they're already dealing with so many changes in their bodies and brains. The teenage brain is still developing, particularly the parts responsible for emotional regulation and risk assessment. This makes them more vulnerable to anxiety disorders, but also more responsive to treatment. If you're a teenager dealing with panic attacks, please know that this doesn't mean you're damaged or that you'll struggle with this forever. Your brain is incredibly plastic right now, which means it's very capable of learning new ways of responding to stress and perceived threats. Also, can we just acknowledge that being a teenager is basically like living in a psychological obstacle? Of course, your hormones are doing the cha-cha. Everyone expects you to figure out your entire life, and somehow you're supposed to do algebra at 8 a.m. Of course, your nervous system is a little overwhelmed. Give yourself some credit for surviving adolescence. It's basically Navy SEAL training for your emotions. Older adults might experience panic attacks differently too. Sometimes they develop panic disorder for the first time later in life, often in response to major life changes like retirement, loss of a spouse, or health issues. The symptoms might be confused with heart problems or other medical conditions, leading to delays in proper diagnosis and treatment. Parents dealing with panic attacks face unique challenges. You're trying to take care of your children while managing your own mental health, and you might worry about how your anxiety affects your kids. The good news is that children are remarkably resilient, and seeing a parent seek help and develop healthy coping strategies actually teaches them valuable lessons about mental health. People in high-stress careers, healthcare workers, first responders, military personnel, teachers, often develop panic attacks as a result of chronic stress and exposure to traumatic situations. There's no shame in this. Your nervous system can only handle so much before it starts sending false alarms, and for people in marginalized communities, panic attacks might be compounded by discrimination, racism, homophobia, transphobia, or other forms of systemic stress. This is called minority stress, and it's a real phenomenon that can contribute to higher rates of anxiety disorders in these populations. Whatever your situation, whatever your background, your panic attacks are valid and treatable. You deserve help, you deserve compassion, and you deserve to feel safe in your own body. Let me share one more story with you. This one about recovery, real recovery, not just management. Her name is David. Yes, David is a woman. She changed. Her name is part of her journey, and she's 45 years old now. For 20 years, from her early 20s to her early 40s, panic attacks controlled every aspect of her life. She couldn't work, couldn't maintain relationships, couldn't leave her house for months at a time. She tried everything: multiple therapists, different medications, alternative treatments, self-help books. Some things helped a little bit, temporarily, but nothing seemed to create lasting change. She began to believe that this was just how her life was going to be. Then, at 42, she found a therapist who specialized in complex trauma and panic disorder. Together, they uncovered connections between David's panic attacks and childhood experiences she had never identified as traumatic. Through intensive therapy, medication adjustments, and a lot of hard work, David began to heal not just the symptoms, but the underlying causes of her panic. It wasn't quick. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and dark days and moments when she wanted to give up. But slowly, gradually, her world expanded again. Today, David travels internationally for work. She's in a loving relationship. She's completing a PhD in psychology because she wants to help other people who are going through what she went through. She still has anxiety sometimes, but it's manageable anxiety, not the life-consuming terror it used to be. "I never thought I'd be able to say this," she told me recently, "but I'm actually grateful for what I went through. Not because suffering is good, but because it taught me about resilience and compassion and the incredible capacity humans have for healing. I know who I am now in a way I never did before." David's story gives me hope, and I hope it gives you hope too. Recovery is possible, not just coping, not just surviving, but actually thriving. It might take time, it might require professional help, it might mean trying different approaches until you find what works for you. But it's possible. You are not stuck with this forever. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not alone in this fight. Every panic attack you survive makes you a little bit stronger. Every coping technique you try adds to your toolkit. Every day you choose to keep going is an act of incredible courage. You might not feel brave. You might feel scared, tired, overwhelmed, hopeless. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and showing up anyway. It's having a panic attack and still getting up the next day. It's reaching out for help even when you're embarrassed. It's trying one more thing when you feel like giving up. That's what you're doing right now by watching this, by learning about panic attacks, by looking for answers. You're refusing to let this thing win. You're fighting for yourself and your future. That's not just brave, that's heroic. So here's what I want you to do. Right now, today, take one small step. Maybe it's making an appointment with a therapist. Maybe it's downloading a meditation app. Maybe it's telling one person in your life what you've been going through. Maybe it's just writing down 3 things you're grateful for, even if one of them is just "I'm still alive," or "Netflix exists," or "My dog doesn't judge me when I have a meltdown." Look, gratitude doesn't have to be profound. It just has to be real. And sometimes "I'm grateful for ice cream" is exactly the kind of honesty your soul needs. Whatever it is, take that step. Not because you have to, not because someone else expects it of you, but because you deserve to feel better. You deserve to feel safe in your own body. You deserve a life that isn't controlled by fear. Your panic attacks have a message for you. They're telling you that your nervous system is overwhelmed, that you need more support, that something in your life needs to change. Listen to that message with compassion, not judgment. Your panic attacks aren't punishment. They're your body's way of asking for help. And help is available. Hope is real. Healing is possible. You are going to be okay. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. And until that day comes, you have us. All of us who know what this feels like, all of us who have walked this path, all of us who believe in your ability to get through this. You survived again, and you'll keep surviving, one breath at a time, one day at a time, one panic attack at a time, until surviving turns into thriving and panic turns into peace. You are stronger than your fear. You are bigger than your panic. You are going to be okay.